Drink.
Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to keep cameras on for just a bit so we say hello. Just personalize it. Welcome to my den. You're in my den, which is also one of my main libraries. And when in doubt, try to make it a little more enjoyable. One advantage of adult ed is if you make things a little bit more enjoyable, adults know that the purpose is what the ultimate purpose is, of course. So not really worried about folks having too much fun like we did when I was a kid. You know, we tried to make things sometimes too much fun. Adults tend to make things not fun enough. They want it to be so deadly serious that, frankly, it's not as memorable. You want to put a little bit of humor into it, put a little bit more of yourself into it, personality, and so on. So I'll start with that introduction. Thanks for saying hello. I see several have said hello in the chat. I'm not going to try to share that for the people listening by recording. But I'm going to pause, and then I think I'm going to mute everybody, and then you unmute yourself one at a time. Okay, when you're ready to talk. Thanks for coming. I know I just made it a little less fun because I turned off the cameras and I muted folks, but you can unmute yourself at any time when you're ready to talk. If there's no noise where you are, well, if there's mild noise where you are, talk anyway. If it's really noisy where you are, of course, type it into the chat. I'm going to go ahead and put something on the whiteboard here. Okay, Cindy Yates cannot connect to audio. Okay, some folks are on, okay, that we're trying to get on. Hi, Autumn.
Hi.
Welcome. We're gonna deal with legal ethics this time. I'm trying to see that the bulk of people are have some kind of audio on. Like I say, if not muted, mute. Okay. Okay. And I've already introduced myself. We like to do active learning. I am part of the St. Cloud faculty now, but I'm remote. Even in non-COVID situations, I probably am not going to be at the St. Cloud campus very often, but I will visit there now that I'm back there. I actually was there before they started paralegal studies. I was there 2005, 2006. There was no paralegal studies program. I was in banking and finance, and I was physically on that campus. 3 or 4 days a week. Big commute from my town, 60 miles each way. And my daughter-in-law graduated from that campus, so not in my program. Well, actually, she did take a couple of courses that I had taught beforehand, but not when she took them in finance. Anyway, how can we change a procedure? We talk about that. If you haven't posted it all in the student lounge, say hi. This is not graded, but this is where personalizing, even though you don't get any immediate points, it tends to help you feel more part of an actual class, and it works. And don't ask me exactly how, but adult ed is still about personalization. And of course, citations. We don't do reference pages anymore, so I'm gonna actually cross that off. Okay. Everything is in the body. After you use the source, cite right there in the paragraph, okay? Modules 1, 2, and 3 have a graded live lecture quiz, none for Module 2 this week. I do plan to hold a live lecture for all 6 modules, not just 3. And of course, it's not called live lecture exactly, it's called live classroom. I like the name live classroom better than live lecture. One reason is that my preference is to answer your questions. If you don't have any questions, I will just continue with my slides as they are. But my preference is to answer questions. You can devise. So one of the things that I learned from a cousin of mine who's in teaching, don't ask people, are there any questions at the end? What I try to do is I ask you at the beginning and even before we start live. When I talk to people on the phone, when I do announcements, I say, can you come up with 1 or 2 questions to ask? You are more than welcome to ask them in course messages in the course instead of always having to ask them here. But it's nice to ask them here because usually your question is something everybody wants to know once they hear the question. They think, oh, I wish I'd have asked that. So go ahead. The only bad question is one that you were unwilling to ask. And it's only bad because you were unwilling to ask it. Okay. So go ahead and ask anything other than how my hair turned gray. So you don't get points for this. Here's the objectives. When in doubt about the contents, a lot of times you look back at the objectives and you say, well, what were we supposed to be learning? What was really Module 2 about? Well, it was about ethics, unauthorized practice, confidentiality, and other rules. That's what it was supposed to be about. We're supposed to analyze model rules and compare to actual enforceable rules. That's what we were supposed to do today. Review the readings and take the quiz. 30 questions, all true or false. I'm not a big fan of true or false. And I guess I can explain why later on, but just do the best you can with it. Review the readings for modules 1 and 2, and it will help you, of course, take the quiz. Remember that your notes are usable. The in written assignments, all your work has to be your own. In quizzes, it's open book in the sense that, yes, they are timed, so you aren't going to have time necessarily to look everything up. Well, everything except discussions for the first 5 weeks is due Sunday night. The calendar is hard to read unless you click on each item. Yes, you do want to reference everything, because I want to see you reading through things newly rather than go back to something you memorized a couple years ago. Didn't I open the quiz in both sections? Oh, look, thought I had. Okay, I'll open it up now. Thought I had opened it in both sections, but maybe not. I have to turn something off in order to open it up. Okay. It's kind of an advantage it wasn't open in your section, because people take these prematurely when they haven't studied, and it's much better, of course, if you have studied first. Okay. Quiz is now open in section 1. Section 2, it's probably been open already. Let's open it up there. I know I'm wasting time, but I'm not wasting time, because it's a necessary thing. Okay, it wasn't open in section 2 either. Okay, it's open in both sections. The template will help a lot, because what it's doing is trying to show you that I want you to separate out your comments, which should be totally totally your language. Even if you think you're too informal, be you on your comments and separate that so very completely from what you found. The sample student did a great job of that. I don't think the sample student went into enough depth with the answers, so easy to criticize. But what you get out of the sample, well, formal is not inherently bad. It just looks like a blogger. It looks like something a lawyer just put out there. Generalized, overall. Can't tell that it's, if I can't tell that it's you going through the readings and thinking about it, then it's really hard for, you're making life harder for me to tell what you're doing. Your part should sound like you. It should sound like you talking to somebody about paralegal studies, and the sources should sound like the sources. That's good. I like the questions. Your first draft should be so original that if you don't typically use good grammar, the first part of it, your first draft, if you're not a grammar stickler, your first draft should even have your typical grammar. Then I would go in there, and if you're not sure about grammar, then I would mark those areas where people have criticized you in the past or where you think you might be wrong. I would mark those areas either in bold or red or something, or use a bubble comment if you know how to do that in Microsoft Word. Do a bubble comment and say, should I have said saw, used the word saw instead of seen here, and more or less mark for yourself the areas where you think your word usage or your grammar might be wrong, as you would in a good first draft. And then, of course, fix it to the best of your ability without taking your personal style out of it for your second draft. Right. Yeah. Well, I can't solve everybody's problem totally. I'm just saying try to make your personal comments personalized and try to make the source sound like the source and then put the site right after it. If you put the right source site right after where you use the source, then the other stuff should be you. And I mean, I guess I was a reader. I was a heavy duty reader as a kid, so I talk like a book. I always have, but that's my personal style. But what I write, or when I write what I think, that's fine. But you shouldn't sound like me, and you shouldn't sound like our text author. Even if you are a heavy duty reader, an ace grammarian, it should still have your personal style, your voice to it, if possible. If you studied English, those of you that have studied English, yours should be more bookish than a classmate's, but it still should be you finding new things about law that you didn't know before. And you say, well, the assignment didn't require me to learn that many new things. Find something new anyway. Even if you knew the basics, find something in the readings that take you one notch past. And if the readings are also familiar, find one thing in the law that goes past the readings, or that confirms that the readings are correct. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And if you've been working on legal ethics in an intense way in the past, of course, then you're going to want to telephone me and get a one step further into Lexis. Okay. A lot of these, I'm going to give you the answer. So the what, I'm going to fill in some of those for you. The basic answers are plain. Where you reference the answer is often the big test more so than the plain answer. May a lawyer bill clients for a paralegal's time? The answer is yes, sometimes. Yeah, and for those of you listening by recording, some of what I've said is responsive to what I'm seeing in the chat, but I've tried to answer generally enough so that you didn't have to have seen the chat to understand it. But if I answered something in the chat and you missed what I was talking about, send me a course message and I'll try to sort it out. Now they're talking about Grammarly, which is really related to what we're talking about. Grammarly is a application that you can get that either integrates in with Microsoft Word or you can just do it separately on the web. And I like to do it separately sometimes or right in my Microsoft Word program. Grammarly is available through Rasmussen, through the Resources tab. One of the things that Grammarly, though, does not do is it doesn't pass my test. I did some horrible legal drafting on purpose that was way too formalistic and legalistic, and I used lots of legal terms, and Grammarly did not figure out how wrong it was. Grammarly does not figure out the logic of what you're saying. Grammarly will not work with some really bad paragraphs. If you put in a really bad paragraph from some legal blogger or from some forum you found online, it's terrible. It doesn't really make any sense, but Grammarly will not necessarily fix it or find it. But for normal talk, Grammarly will pick out a lot of stuff that it should pick out, okay? Any questions about what I'm saying? Problems? Will the tutoring help with the specifics? Yes, very much so. And I have corresponded with the tutor that's running the Wednesday group too. Yeah, I like Grammarly a lot. Just don't expect it to do everything. It will fix certain grammar problems. It will make good suggestions, but it will not fix everything. The other thing is, if you properly cite, it will still say plagiarism because it's found it. It doesn't really give you credit for the fact that you cited things right below where you use them. But if you test it for plagiarism and it says, 70% or 80% of your paper is plagiarized, technically it may not be because you cited, but maybe you don't have enough original content. There's not enough what you think in there. So you are showing where you found it, but if it's all where you found it stuff and there's no what you think stuff, we're not really there yet. No. No, when I'm talking about the paralegal study session, not which is technically not the same as tutoring, but one of the tutors runs it. Did you guys get your message from me that assigned you a tutoring task to work with the tutors within the scheduled tutors who are the students who have actually taken the same class. The students that have actually taken the class can work with you on the specifics. They won't give you final answers necessarily, but they'll help you whichever way they can. They'll help you do as much of it as you can yourself. So I'm going to give you the answers, but of course the problem is documenting your answers. So is it the supervising lawyer's responsibility to take every possible measure to make sure the paralegal preserves client confidence? Actually, that seems exaggerated, but I'm going to say yes. I mean, I would probably use the word every reasonable measure. I don't know what every possible means. I would say reasonable or reasonable possible. I've got a big imagination. I can imagine a lawyer trying to do an investigation on a potential employee or something and hire an investigator. They're not going to do that. But they're going to do that which is reasonably possible to have the paralegal preserve client confidences. May a lawyer delegate the amount of fee to be charged? No. Is a lawyer responsible for the professional actions? Yes. Can a lawyer split his fee with the paralegal? No. Bonuses for extra work are allowed, though. So if a paralegal ends up doing extra hours or something like that on a difficult case, even though the paralegal is normally just on a salary, I don't think it's illegal for the lawyer to pay extra, but it wouldn't be a fee split. Do you know what a fee split is? Fee split is when two lawyers say, well, I will assist you with this case, but I get 1/3 of whatever you get. So if I referred out a case, I could split a fee if I wanted to with the other lawyer, if the other lawyer agreed, and the client agreed. Okay. But it's not considered ethical to do a fee splitting agreement with a paralegal because they're not a licensed lawyer. Then this one is answered from the ABA document, but you may also use your state laws if you wish. I do want you to go past the ABA as soon as you can. The reason we're using the ABA is just it's easier. But they are similar to the actual rules, but ABA ones are not enforceable. Yeah, the ABA, one of the documents is on the ABA and doesn't have a problem. The other one is not on the ABA website. And I'll go over that on the next slide, okay? Okay, this is the previous slide you wanted, Alicia. Alicia's asking for the previous slide. Okay. This one is also, the answers are easy, but documenting them is not super, super easy, okay? When it says hold himself out to the public, what do you think that means? The lawyer not admitted. No, I am admitted in Minnesota, although I have, well, we're working on the intro class TIA, so maybe there's two TIAs involved. I don't know. I have a different TIA, I guess, in the other class. But anyway, the intro class started at 7 Central Daylight Time. Okay. When is the lawyer responsible for the conduct of a paralegal called a Okay. If and I'm technically admitted to the bar in Minnesota, but I have, in order to get a lower fee, because I'm not actually practicing law, I'm inactive, but I would only have to pay a few bucks to be active. Um, but if I said, oh, I'm also a lawyer in a different state and name the state, that would be unethical. You see where I'm coming from? I'll give you a simple example. We had a couple simplified probates in other states, and I figured out certainly what I needed done in those other states. But instead of doing the work in the other state, I made sure that our probates hired a lawyer in each state. Do you see why? Does it make sense that I hired a lawyer in another state to do some standard probate documents? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and of course, the so-called vacation or retirement states, um, you have Minnesota people, for instance, that have property in Arizona, Florida, Texas, other states, and so on. But in each case, when they own property in two states, I only did the work in the state in which I was licensed, and then, but I assisted in hiring lawyers in the other state. It was kind of peculiar because um, technically I was the lead lawyer in the probate because we had the main probate in our state, but I assisted in hiring lawyers in the other states. But we would typically pay a flat fee because they were doing a lesser job in terms of amount of time expended. Um, but I also guaranteed those lawyers that they could charge more than their flat fee if we bothered them and kept calling or writing or creating extra work. We set it up so that those lawyers could do their work efficiently and just finish the job on the property owned in their state. And we streamlined it for them, and they were happy with their flat fee. That way that we did not have to budget some big dollar amount for hourly pay for lawyers in other states when we were doing all of the basic administration. So, but so that's how we did it. But what I did then was ethical because I only practiced Minnesota law. I did not interpret the law of any other state. We always had a lawyer to do that. So more or less, I was, I could certainly provide information to a lawyer in another state, just as a paralegal can provide information. So the lawyer in the other state did not have to keep telephoning to find out name, date of birth, date of death, addresses of next of kin. They didn't have to telephone people or call them or email to do that. May a lawyer do that? No, a lawyer may not do that. Okay. No, you cannot hold yourself out as something that you're not. Concurrent conflict of interest is a conflict of interest at the same time. Concurrent means at the same time. So for and against the same client at the same time would be a concurrent conflict of interest. This one is this is a trick question. Typically, the main answer is a lawyer cannot be an advocate and a witness in the same case. And this is an exception, okay? But this didn't come up in my practice, but if we had sued for, if we had been able to successfully sue for legal fees in addition to a basic case, I could have testified, well, I spent 15 hours on this case, and this would be a typical fee, hourly fee for it. I could have testified on that and not ruined it. But if I was a fact witness, I would have not been also the lawyer. So let's say that I witnessed an attempted murder, and I intervened in the situation physically and stopped the murder. Could I then turn around and be the lawyer for one of the sides, the prosecution or defense? What do you think? And they say, well, why can't you? You get your testimony, and then you give your testimony in a sports shirt, and then rush into the cloakroom, put on a suit, and then show up there. Why can't you? You go back hundreds of years, and juries were people who had seen the facts. They had seen what had happened, and a jury was allowed to do that. But it's much different now, isn't it? Now you're not allowed to be a lawyer if you are a fact witness of the case itself, what happened on the ground. But a lawyer may testify to certain preliminary matters or to the fees. Yes, they do. And if they have a better qualified person in the law office, they can get a discount. Leslie asked if lawyers have malpractice insurance like doctors. Some lawyers do not know they can get a discount for having a qualified person, a college graduate, working for them. I cannot guarantee that the company that, if you work for a lawyer and you say that, the lawyer may check with the company and the company says, we don't give a discount specifically for that. Well, that's possible too, but as I made up the applications, there was a very detailed application that we would do, and it was a little different with each company. But as you made up the application, we would tell the truth, nothing but the truth, the whole truth to these companies. And the more truth we told them, the better discounts they gave us. And having two pairs of eyes, two people who were knowledgeable, a lawyer and a qualified assistant who was who had either substantial training or certainly college level learning, that was definitely helpful in getting a better rate because it's individually rated. And one of the questions, what system do you have for checking conflicts of interest? What system do you have for ensuring that you are on time with cases? Calendaring is what they called it, that you're on time. How many people look at it? Is the lawyer ultimately responsible for being on time for the cases? And I'm kind of translating the words they use, but the fact that I had a qualified people assisting me did help me get lower rates. And a couple of insurance guys told me I had the lowest rates in the state, but we worked at it. And we also had two pairs of eyes going over the application because we were very detailed in the application, and they knew we were being truthful, and I think that helped. You also had the situation where we would bid out two companies and they would bid against each other. So yes, we did, but we were able to get low rates. You had, at that time, you had at least two companies selling insurance in each state. I believe at least in my state, we always had two or three companies. We didn't have 24 companies. It's not like auto insurance or something where you've got dozens of companies. And it's not like auto insurance, you don't have, it's not standardized to the extent that auto coverage is or something. There's no rate sheet. Not in the sense that, you're not dealing with millions. There may be a million lawyers, but there aren't that many lawyers in each state, and you don't all have the same company, so you don't really have a 50-state company out there that can rate lawyers with that much science. So there, it is a little negotiable. This is a little more difficult in some ways than the written assignment in terms of research. This is where I hope you will find your Lexis password because um, okay, so find your Lexis password if you can. If you don't find it, contact me. Um, we can do some searches. I can do some live searches now if we have a request for it. But we're talking about rules and statutes, not just rules. I think the reason that this was put in there, that the more difficult research was for the discussion, was just to kind of give you a break so that you could, while you're learning how to research, you could still rack up points in the written assignment, okay? Because they made the written assignment easier by using ABA, but then ABA made it harder because we have to do an end run around ABA for one of the items. Keep using the Justice Studies Guide. That will help a lot. I will put it in the chat, and I will keep putting it into the, yeah. Yeah, you all should have gotten, when you started paralegal studies, sometime between that registration and the start of class, you should have gotten your Lexis login from Lexis. If you didn't, contact me and I will get Dennis Johnson to get it to you, law librarian. But Lexis is not set up as a database. It's not a database. It's a finding tool. It's very powerful, but you need to have some idea what you're looking for, where you're looking for it. So I will show you how to go to your state, and I will show you how to go to your state and then go to the specific source within Lexis, because Lexis is not a source of law. It's a finder tool, and it's a editor tool. They have, when you find the correct statute, once you get somewhere in Lexis, you really are somewhere, though, because then you have rules, and you can go to the case law that interprets the rules. When you have statutes, you can go to the case law that interprets the statutes. So once you've got to your basic source, then your thoroughness, a lot of it has already been done for you to help you be thorough. Lexis is incredibly thorough, and when you really want to know something, it helps tremendously. It's not intended for just casual researchers, but that's the reason I want you to learn it. ABA guidelines, these are not in the ABA itself anymore for free. No longer there. Not in the ABA. So we're going to use the one from the guide. So I'm going to take you to the guide, okay? Now, how did I get to these? You know, I was at the home page, and then I went not to calendar, but I went to resources on the upper right. Can you guys see the resources, what I'm about to click on? Upper right. Yeah. And you can certainly go to a tutoring platform here if you get lost, or you can certainly just contact me. But I'd like you to set up a tutoring to get to Blue Book. And of course, the guides and so on. The other thing is you can talk to, one of the best things is if you really want to do Lexis, you make an appointment with Dennis Johnson. And that's incredibly powerful in terms of being able to make really, really good use of Lexis, because he understands not only Lexis, but he understands our assignments. The Lexis reference librarians understand our assignments. Excuse me, the Lexis reference librarians understand their own databases that they and their own system for getting to the databases, but they don't understand our assignments, and Dennis knows both. Okay. But to get to the guide, you could go right to Blue Book, and then we'll go to the rest of the guide. How's that? Can you see Blue Book? Go down from Library Resources, go down to Paralegal Blue Book. Okay, ready? This. And this will help you. And then, of course, Tutor Match, I've already sent you that. And then Blue Book tab. And then, of course, here's School of Justice Studies. And this talks about not only Blue Book, but it also talks about the other parts of it. So we're going to go to Introduction to Law and the Legal System Helps. And go to Paralegal Ethics. How am I doing so far? Are you able to see how I'm navigating? Okay. The other thing is you could go right to RAS guides and so on, but I will also put a direct link to just the paralegal portion of this. Okay. I'll put that in the course again. I think I've already got it on the home page, but I'll put it up there again. But paralegal ethics. And this, you cannot, for some reason, you can no longer get to it directly from the ABA. But Dennis has a PDF for you here. Dennis Johnson has, okay? And then, of course, you have ABA model rules. And this, you can get to it from ABA. Now, why they kept this up and not the other, I don't know. But what you want is the rules table of contents. And here it talks about unauthorized practice of law and so on. Responsibilities regarding non-lawyer assistance, which would include paralegal. So if you go here and analyze this, skim through the model rules table of contents. It's talking about confidentiality and things like that. You don't have to know it all, but just do the best you can. Some of the stuff here is very good. Some of this is not nearly as good as I want it to be. Here's my favorite one to criticize: expediting litigation. I wish they would, but the people who formed the ABA, to me, this amounts to nothing. Reasonable efforts to expedite litigation consistent with the interests of the client. Well, they can always say that whatever they're doing is in the interest of the client. So this is a toothless wonder. Stallers love this. People who like to stall in order for advantage for their client love this rule because it's marshmallow rule. I don't like it. The ABA has done a lot of good things, but they also make me angry. Okay? They're overly political to my point of view, and the types of bad things that big law firms do, they are marshmallows on. In other words, there's no teeth in their stuff. But of course, they don't have authority anyway. So, but they do have that kind of they do have influence over states, which I think is sometimes good, but often not so good. Like I say, expediting litigation. I wish states would ignore this and do a good one, okay? But a lot of the rest of this makes a lot of sense. Most of it makes sense to me. Professional independence, unauthorized practice. A lot of this is really good, and states were smart to adopt this, okay? I'm trying to be objective and still tell you what my biases are. So I'm not a objective, totally unbiased person about everything, okay? Yeah, right. I prefer that you use the NALA version rather than the ABA because the latest ABA version is a book for sale. But I don't know if, I guess I like the NALA version just a tad better for my thinking. But as long as you use the one that the one that Dennis Johnson has for you, that's fine. You can also find it on the web with the search, but then you're kind of trusting that you found a good one. Yeah. I like the NALA one. You know, I trust NALA. I actually do think that a lot of people to try to lean over and be a little more fair than I typically am with the ABA. I do think that they've done a lot of good scholarship and thinking through these things and so on. They do have committees, smart people. Okay, I'm trying my best to be fair. Read all the lecture notes each week. Ethics. I think you're going to find that most legal ethics are the same as your personal ethics. So you treat others as you would like to be treated. Obligation to treat clients with respect, fairness, and dignity. Be as zealous or more zealous for their cause than we would with our own, and so on. Read through all of this. As you go through the course, do a self-evaluation of your own skills. And use the rubric on how to do these things. clearly show use of sources, and then show comprehension by using the student's own words. Don't think of yourself as starting with up there and then going downwards if you make an error. That's self-defeating. Don't call and tell me you usually get very high scores and feel you must have done something terribly wrong if you lost points. You didn't lose points. You want to use persistence, interpretation, show work, ask questions, do what can be done with incomplete information, show a search attempt. I drafted what I could, here's what is missing, and here's where I look for the information. So if one of my employees had said, here's what I could come up with, here's what's missing, here's where I looked, I'm happy. Don't just type or copy what you found. That doesn't create a lasting or memorable benefit. Doing your own drafting attempts earns points for good reason. It does track what you should be doing at a really good job. Positive self-reinforcing. Think of yourself as starting from zero. You're starting from zero, and every time you add something of quality, you gain points. So you start with zero, you draft for basics. So try to get the basics down on the page early in your first draft. So you got a basic answer and you say, well, I already knew that stuff. Or I skimmed through and I obviously saw there was a basic answer, fine. But draft it, get it on the page first. Then try to gain more points. Then a more personalized explanation. What you personally actually think, not just what you found. And then, of course, proofread. Questions about how to build up your score. You're winning a game that has steps or stages. Every time you get something, you keep it. That's my point. Don't think of starting out perfect and then losing. You don't lose anything. You take a chance on thinking for yourself. The more you think for yourself and are willing to put it on the page, the more points you gain. That's how I want you to think about it positively. Adult learning points by thinking for yourself and using new sources. So it's not that you start out and a lot of you start out with a very large fund of information of various types. I realize that. But I've had students that were grandparents with great levels of wisdom and knowledge before they ever met me. If you just talked to us on the phone, you'd say, well, that student of yours knows more than you do about lots of things, and I'd agree. Now, I know more about the technicalities of law, but some of those students have such a large fund of information and wisdom, everything, that's fine. But one of the things that they do, these wise students, is that they are trying to go up in their skills every week, okay? I try to do that within the ability and the time and energy that I have. I'm being asked about whether I do grading comments. I do grading comments. Some of them are rubric scoring comments. So if you look through your grading comments, you say, well, that looks kind of standardized and true. I have to do that because I'm teaching 4 different sections, 2 of your course, 2 sections in other 2 courses. So I'm not teaching just you. So I have many papers to grade. So I have to do some standardized stuff, but I try to give some clues to do better in my grading comments each time. Plus I have some scoring that's just based on the scoring system called the rubric. But if you look through my comments and the rubric and it's not working, call or text for a phone time. Don't work for you. Sometimes they don't work for students. I think I was clear, but you don't, and that's legitimate. So text me for a phone time. And just don't say, you know, give me an idea when you want to call so I don't call you at supper time or something. Yeah, I'm getting paid, so do not be shy about using my time. That's what I get paid for. I get paid to be, I was remote before remote was cool, okay? How come I was remote before remote was cool is because I'm more than willing to reach out. I enjoy doing it. Okay? So treat this as a scholastic law office, realism, but more leeway for beginners than a real law office. And more coaching is available than in a normal law firm. And when in doubt, talk about what you tried, who you asked, where in the course or text did you go. I'm going to back up a little bit too to the substance. Go back to NALA. Who wants to look at we're out of time pretty much, but do you guys want me to go to Lexis and find your state? Because not everybody does, but I think that's something that we have not covered, but it's really super useful for those that want it. Those that don't want it, that's okay too. If you're not ready for that, the sooner the better, as far as pretty soon we're going to get into heavy duty law and it's going to help, but whether you're ready for it or not, it's kind of up to you. Let's try Illinois. Okay, I saw Illinois. Okay, who sees Lexis Advance? Okay, very rarely do I just start from up here. Very rarely. I generally want you to drill down to your state and to a specific source within Lexis. It's a great finder, but you want to learn the types of laws as you go. So if you already have a complete or a partial citation, you can type it in here. But if you are learners, I would even more so use this. And if you're skilled researchers, you know which kind of source you want. Then, of course, the on-demand training, the phone, the live chat works pretty well if you know what you want. If you know you want a statute, I don't know if you can see that phone number down there, but I'll see. Can you see it now, phone number? It's always down here. And I will give it to you in the chat, but I've also given it in, I will also give it in other ways too. But anyway, let's go to Illinois. And I explore content, I go to state. And I don't want cases right now. I want to try statutes and see if practice of law is in there. see if I can do that just in plain language. And I see 805 ILCS, Illinois Compiled Statutes annotated. And this would be a good one to start with in the introductory course for an Illinois student. It's not a direct answer to everything. So I would probably take a look in the table of contents for Professional Association Act. So get to okay, that's under business organizations. I'd probably back up. I'm going to back up on that a little bit. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to try unauthorized practice of law. And I'm going to put it in quotes. And I just kind of skim down. And 705 ILCS 2051 is probably the best statute to go to. And now I'm going to go to the same state. I'm going to go to rules. Okay. Go back up to Lexis Advanced. Go back to Illinois. Now I'm going to go, it says statutes and legislation, but it also includes rules here, Illinois local, state, and federal court rules. And I'm going to try Illinois Supreme Court rules because the Supreme Court's in charge of lawyers. And I'm going to go to Illinois Rules of Professional Conduct, which is under Article Roman numeral 8. And this will look very similar to the ABA rules, but it's not the ABA rules because this is actually enforceable. The language is many times familiar, it's very similar to ABA, but it's not always precisely the same. And again, this is enforceable. So like lawyer as witness, you can go to that. Okay. Does it make sense now? And of course, once you're there, you get not only that commentary, and you get legal cases by just scrolling down. Okay. Okay, now let's go to a couple more states. Okay, we're going to go up to the top. And we want to find unauthorized practice in Michigan. I don't know Michigan very well, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it as a beginner, okay? I'm going to still drill down Michigan. And I'm going to go to Michigan Compiled Laws Service. And I'll try practice of law. This looks like it's under the corporation, so I don't think that's going to help, but this one looks like pay dirt, unauthorized practice of law. Okay. And I know I'm going a little fast, but you get there, and then, again, you want to understand how it's really interpreted, you go to one of these cases and you use a link. Now I'm going to see if Michigan has their rules in a separate, most of them, their rules are not part of the statutes themselves. It's under statutes and Lexis, so under statutes and legislation. So I go to Michigan local, state, and federal court rules. And this is not under something called Supreme Court rules. It's just under state, local, and federal court rules. So we go to Michigan Rules of Professional Conduct, which is right above the judicial conduct and right below Rules of Evidence. So I go that, I open up the plus sign, and you see familiar things that look like it's structured similarly to the other states and to the ABA. And here again, lawyer as witness. I'm suspecting, yeah, it looks very similar to the others, and this one does not have cases under it, which I'm not sure why. Yep, doesn't have cases under it. Some of the rules will, I believe. And then Minnesota and then Wyoming, okay? Anybody still there? Go to LexisNexis Minnesota statute and annotated statutes. And this one maybe is too easy for me because I know where it is. So maybe I'll do it as a search. And I don't always have to put it into, I don't always have to put it into quotes. And that's got me right there. But sometimes you get lost and you say, I don't know whether to put something in quotation marks or just regular. Then use that phone number. No, I'm not seeing it. Where's the phone number? Anyway, use the reference attorney phone number. Not at the bottom of everything, is it? Anyway, I will give it to you again. Okay, it's on this basic page. And then, of course, we want the rules of professional conduct there. So we go below that, below the statutes, into Minnesota state and federal court rules. Minnesota is just full of rules. And so you go past a lot of them to get to this one to open up. Rules on lawyers' professional responsibility. Let's see. That's not it, though. This is the rules that they follow in disciplining lawyers. What we want is Minnesota Rules of Professional Conduct. Excuse me. Open up the plus sign. Yep, there we go. Advocate, there's lawyer as witness again. Some of them use different numbering. Minnesota and Michigan and some of those use similar numbering to the ABA. Now let's try Wyoming, okay? If you get lost, like I say, go back to that beginning and you say, I know I need statute and rules, and go to customer support. So go to Wyoming. And then statutes. Unauthorized practice of law. We'll try it without quotation marks again. And then it has some cases underneath it. This would be the law. And then, of course, go back to Wyoming and go to state and federal court rules. Rules of professional conduct is down here. I had to scroll down quite a bit to get to them. And here's good old Rule 3.7, similar to what you're used to, but again, enforceable. Okay, well, is anybody else from Louisiana? Because let's do Louisiana right now, if that's okay. I can pause the recording if just putting some of it into the recorder for Louisiana, and we are finding things in Louisiana. We found unauthorized practice of law right there. And we will look in the court rules. Rules of the Supreme Court. I'm not sure if the bylaws of the nope, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing the, I would have to look up the rules of professional conduct here. But here's Code of Judicial Conduct, so it should be close to there. Oh, it's under the Articles of Incorporation of the Louisiana State Bar Association. Rules of Professional Conduct are here. How's that?